Join us for the great American Thanksgiving Day tradition. The streets of New York City are lined with millions of spectators, and holiday cheer is in the air. A celebration filled with television and music's biggest stars, world-famous balloons, phenomenal floats. It's all coming your way live on NBC.
Happy holidays to all our loyal listeners. We're reporting to you live from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's a beautiful day here in Herald Square in New York City. I'll be your host, Jacob, here with my co-host, Julius. How you feeling today, John?
It's good to be here. I'm glad I could make it outside.
We aim to give you the play-by-play. Here's the floats drift slowly by. Many charities walking and holding these floats. It's simply a great day for goodwill and togetherness. Here comes the first float of the afternoon. Of course, we open today's festivities with Tony the Turkey, our flagship float, plump in the middle and feathered except on the top of the head.
It appears there's a slight addition to Tony the Turkey this year.
You're right, Jeff. It looks like some sort of horn has been taped on to Tony.
Right you are. Tony appears to be blowing his own horn profusely.
Well, it is quite annoying. Anyway, as Tony the Turkey fades into the distance, our next float approaches.
Is that a Death Star? Is that a bowl of ice cream? It looks like a boob. James, it looks like a boob. What was once two glorious boobs is now one decrepit, poorly inflated boob. This has to be the Kevin Wallen float.
Oh yeah, confirmed. It is the Kevin Wallen float. I can see him on top trying to suckle on the nipple. Oh, it's pretty sad. Oh boy, well, it's floating off pretty fast as it's pretty aerodynamic as just one boob, but there it goes. The next float up appears to be Corey the Camel, the awkward, gangly creature always accompanied by his trusty companion, Rob the Redskin.
That's right, Justin. He never seems to leave home without him.
Oh no, he dropped him. Oh, Fat Rob just fell. Oh, well, he will no doubt make some lucky fan's day.
He somehow fell directly into the garbage. It's almost like no one wanted him.
Corey the Camel carries on down the street, and speaking of camels, here comes Nor's float. George with a J.
It's Jorge.
Oh, my apologies, amigo. Muy sorry. Anyway, Nor's float was initially scheduled to lead the pack, but has now fallen far in the rear, really looking up at some of the other floats.
No problem, Jerry. There also appears to be a float depicting a man exchanging a banana peel for a PS4. This has to be the Collusion Brothers float coming at us.
You're right, Jesse. A Craigslist deal gone wrong.
Gone very wrong. And we were told that there would be a float for Slater this year, but apparently he couldn't afford one due to cap limitations. Apparently now, is Slater himself trying to chase down the other balloons and poke holes in them. He's got a knife.
He sure does, Jane. I think maybe the authorities should get involved here. Yeah, he's definitely taking some pot shots here at some of the other floats. Oh, yes, the authorities are there on scene now, and, yep, looks like Slater is taking off in the other direction. Oh, forgot to wear a belt today. His pants are now around his ankles. He's still giving chase. He trips and falls, and it looks like he's been subdued by the New York Police Department. Our bravest and finest, gentlemen.
He's continually yelling he has to go get a haircut, and, fuck Corey. I don't know what that means.
All right, John, next float up for the second year in a row, donated by Boston Dynamics, the G Moneytron, the robotic Jaguar.
Some faggots, big sixes and ugly dresses. Oh, Joe smoke calling up my dresses. Oh, baby, mighty room temperature.
And next up is Sam Nix's float. It's not a float at all, excuse me. It's Sam Nix. He's trying to strangle Mike Wallace. He's trying to strangle Mike Wallace. He's literally strangling Mike Wallace. Is that security still here from Slater earlier?
Yep, they're on scene and they're giving chase. Sam looks to run. Yep, he's fleeing down the street. And there go the pants. They're around the ankles again. But they slowed down and the police have subdued him as well. Looks like they've got two more candidates for the paddy wagon here. Oh, they're tasing his balls. The final float of the evening is JB on the Ledge, the annual suicide prevention float overlooking a stage, which looks like, that's rapper Logic performing on stage. What a treat for the fans. go. What a treat for the fans. Thanks for joining us here live from the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade. Let's head back to the studio with Sam and Nor.
Thanks, Jonathan. I just realized I've been at the wrong parade this whole time.
All this other shit I'm talking about, they think they know it. I've been praying for somebody to say me know what's
I'm from Holland. Did you not see it?
Two things I can't stand: people who are intolerant of other people's cultures, and the Dutch.
Damn Dutch, what's so evil?
I am your other host, Sam Nix.
We have so many hosts.
I felt like Kevin for a night. Like, oh, exactly what I need is happening.
Oh, baller.
I'm so baller.
Baller.
Oh, and I bet $300 on this game too. Oh,
Baller.
oh yeah.
All right, let's give this a try. Let's see how far we go.
Wait, we need two more J names: Julian, Jebediah, and Joe. All right, are we ready for this?
Let's do it.
Thanks, Jebediah and Julian. Appreciate that. Hope you're having fun at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I'm your host, Sam, with my co-host, Nor, and JB behind the glass. We're here to bring you another stirring episode of the Dual Threat Podcast. This is episode 12, where we'll be breaking down Week 11 action from the NFL. Let's get straight into it with our matchup review section. Matchup 1, Kevin versus Corey, man of the match. Tom Terrific shined in New England's bout against the Oakland Raiders. He finished 30 of 37 pass attempts for 339 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Brady's 25 fantasy points really cleared the way for Corey's victory over Kevin this week to run his win total to an impressive 8 in a row.
Holy shit.
Biggest disappointment. I wanted to pick Alex Smith in this spot as he put up a paltry 7 points against a reeling Giants squad. But by far the biggest disappointment of the day, the week, the month, the year, the century was Greg Zuerlein's pathetic 1-point performance at Minnesota. Zuerlein had just put up 3 straight 17-point weeks, so for him to come up so small in such a crucial game was backbreaking.
I broke my back.
Overall thoughts. Kevin's collapse appears to be complete as the once 4-0 team has now lost 6 of his last 7 games. Struggling to find any consistency at quarterback and running back, this team just doesn't have the high upside players to support his routinely low-scoring players. On the flip side, Corey picks up the win in convincing fashion as he receives solid contributions from many players, even Mike Wallace. Corey separates further from the field as he secures a first-round bye, while Kevin drops to 5-6 on the year.
The usual suspects show up here for Corey. When it comes to Kevin's team, I know it's all been well documented. I still have trouble saying that his team is absolutely dead until the clock strikes 0 at the end of next week. He just always seems to find a way to squeak into the playoffs and go on these runs. So until he's out, I'm not saying he's out.
Matchup 2, Tony versus Slater. Man of the match. In a high-scoring matchup, a defense was the difference maker as the Ravens piled on the points with 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and shut out the Packers, resulting in 31 fantasy points. Biggest disappointment. Evan Ingram disappointed in a big way here, scoring 0 fantasy points on just 1 catch for 9 yards in the Giants' upset over the Kansas City Chiefs. Ingram had been on a roll, scoring a touchdown in each of his last 4 games. He was a big letdown in this matchup as he failed to score a single point against the struggling Kansas City defense. Overall thoughts. Talk of Slater's demise may have been greatly exaggerated as he picks up the win here, and unfortunately for him, he will have to sweat it out next week as Ariola is still nipping at his heels. Tony continues his descent into madness as he has now lost 3 matches in a row. It appears the early season shit-talking is really catching up with him. Slater picks up the win here and moves to 4-7 on the season, while Tony drops to 6-5.
No surprise that this matchup had plenty of fire to it. Both these teams really don't like each other. It's really clear. Great to see Slater squeak out the victory here. As you said, Tony's clearly just already lost control. Fondly looking back into next year, trying to reminisce about days long gone.
Matchup 3, Gomez versus Jason. Man of the match. The Jags defense strikes again as they score over 20 points for the 4th time this season. They dominated the helpless Browns, scoring 28 fantasy points on 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and a defensive score. The Jags D continues to carry a large portion of Gomez's point totals this year, and the sheer impact of their consistency is astonishing.
It was certainly an inspired battle between these two. The team names were flying, but as it turns out, the Saxonville, or Swagwars, defense just continues to roll Gomez to victory after victory. And when it comes to Jason's side of this, Jason, what's happening?
The last thing you do when you die is crap your pants.
Biggest disappointment. It appears the Derek Carr we saw lighting up the Kansas City defense on Thursday night for 29 fantasy points is a distant memory, as the Raiders QB has now scored 12, 12, and 13 fantasy points in his last 3 contests. It remains to be seen if Jason will count on him moving forward, but there's no doubt Jason left some wins on the table with Derek Carr under center this year. Overall thoughts. This loss could spell disaster for Jason as he went from playoff hopeful to possible beer bitch. No! The names were quite entertaining earlier in the week, but the actual matchup left a lot to be desired as Jason put up a putrid 72 points. Gomez backed up the smack talk behind the dominating Jags D and puts himself in prime position to secure a playoff spot. Points tiebreakers are going to be huge come playoff time. Jason slides into the abyss at 4-7, while Gomez propels himself to 6-5. Matchup 4, Ferralis versus Areola, the Collusion Bowl. Man of the match. Big Ben came up big in this matchup as he finished 30 of 45 for 299 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, as well as tacking on exactly 10 rushing yards to add insult to injury. Roethlisberger finished with 28 fantasy points and proved to be the difference in this high-scoring affair. Biggest disappointment. QB play wasn't so pretty on the other side of the matchup as Dak Prescott stunk it up against a strong Philly defense. He finished with 18 of 31 for 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions to go along with 10 yards on the ground and a fumble lost. Dak finished with -2 fantasy points, really submarining any chance Ferralis had in this matchup. Overall thoughts. The steadying force of Dak Prescott seems to have waned, and Jerick McKinnon's big games are few and far between. Recently acquired Alshon Jeffrey played well in his first game, but this team may have been too shell-shocked by Le'Veon Bell's departure to perform well enough this week. On the flip side, Areola finds the victory here in a win or go get my beer bitch scenario. On the backs of Roethlisberger and Mark Ingram, Areola survives into the final week of the Gridiron Gala regular season.
The newly dubbed Collusion Brothers were on a collision course in this one. Don't look now, but Areola seems to have finally gotten the right balance from some of his core players.
Matchup 5. Sam versus Noor. Man of the match.
I don't want to talk about it.
I have never said these words until I watched the Monday night shootout between Atlanta and Seattle, but I love Russell Wilson. He's awesome. Traitor! Especially now that he is asked to do so much more with the Seattle defense struggling. Russell Wilson finished 26 of 42 for 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception through the air, while tacking on 86 yards and a rushing touchdown on the ground. Russell Wilson combined for 30 fantasy points and was the difference in this matchup. Biggest disappointment. Zach Ertz had not been spectacular this season, but was consistent, if nothing else. So the 0-point performance against the Dallas Cowboys had to have been disappointing, as he caught just 2 balls for 8 yards on 5 targets. Ertz tied his season low in targets and wasn't needed to do much against the Cowboys in Week 11. Overall thoughts. The tides seem to be turning for these two teams, as I have now won 2 games in a row, while Noor, you have lost 2 games in a row. It is amazing how time changes everything, as Noor appeared unstoppable in weeks 1 through 5, and fears of him peaking too early appear to have been valid, as he has now lost 4 of his last 6 matchups. It was messy to begin the Sunday matchups, as I just straight up forgot to start San Diego's defense, but they weren't needed, as Noor was submarined by the combined -1 fantasy points from his kicker and tight end. I pick up the win and move to 6-5 on the season, while Noor drops into second place but is almost assured a first-round bye, assuming he doesn't get outscored by 200 points in Week 12. Anything to say about our match?
Oh, there you go.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, friend.
Hey.
You doing okay?
Anything you want to say to the people about our matchup?
I knew that going into this week, with you having so many players going on Monday night, even though you started more players on Monday night by the time Monday rolled around, that I would need to be up like really 40, 45 or something to be comfortable, just based on the output that Russell and Graham, that stack has been having for you. I knew like it wasn't going to be truly safe. As I was watching the Sunday night game, though, I knew that whatever needed to happen on Monday was going to happen. That Sunday night game couldn't have gone really any worse for me. Wentz puts up a pretty pedestrian 19. Not terrible, but he's certainly been way hotter than that as of late. He had a gimme touchdown with Zach Ertz, which would have been a nice cushion to have. Probably doesn't matter after the fact, but you never know. Get rocked out of Ertz's hands, like inside the goal line. So that was great. And then, my one waiver wire pickup in the last couple weeks was picking up Jake Elliott. And he manages to miss his first kick since week 3. And then somehow bang his head into someone while he's trying to tackle him. I don't know what the fuck he was trying to do. And out with a concussion. Cool. It's like, cool or something. Jake Elliott, you never trust a man with 2 first names. Kids, you remember that.
I obviously wasn't with the group on Sunday, unfortunately, but I'm wondering, when did you notice that I had been starting 8 players that day?
Well, I noticed right away, because I was like, I thought I was playing against Chargers defense, and I was like, well, they're just destroying everyone right now. I think Bosa and Ingram had like 3 sacks each in the first 4 minutes or something, and I was like, this is not good. But when I looked back to the score right after that, there's something in that game that triggered it. I was like, oh, okay. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
I did it not for myself. Obviously, I knew I was going to win. It was for the league.
Motherfucker.
I wanted to make Monday night special for everybody. Give us something to watch on Monday night, If I had started the Chargers, it's no intrigue. Nothing to watch. But you're welcome, all the loyal listeners out there. You're welcome.
Yeah, a week removed from Devin Funchess having non-consensual sex with my team. I really wanted that Monday night intrigue. Thank you.
I think
Shut your whore mouth.
All right, thanks, guys. Well, welcome to the last regular season installment of Slater Slanders. Can't believe it's already been 12 weeks since we started this, since we had the draft. It's crazy. It's going by quick. It's been a slow death for me. But this is what it's coming down to. The last week, the Beerbridge Force making this really interesting. I think a lot of people are looking at the playoffs, obviously, but I think it's just entertainment for sure. I think everyone's going to be score watching this last week. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I couldn't believe it. I had to look today, and I forgot that Jason wanted to throw his hat in the ring for Beer Bitch. I didn't even think about that. I was so focused on scoreboard watching Mike, and I didn't even think of that scenario. So that's going to be interesting. And last week, This is why I hate fantasy so much, because you have weeks like this, and it makes you think, man, this is fun. This is great. Been waiting 12 weeks for this shit. And side note, I didn't even see Tony's team name until I saw Sunday, and it made it that much more sweeter. Just mollywop that ass. Emmanuel Sanders would be better. Tony, if you knew the minutes that I put in preparing for this, I think you would have a lot more respect. But again, that's a little justice for that. The last week, it's going to be pretty simple for me. I win, and I guarantee you, I'm not beer bitch. And actually, I looked into it, and if I beat Ferralis this week, and Kevin loses, and I outscore Ferralis by 60. I'm in. Very, very doable. 60, outscoring 60. Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there just for me. If Mike, or, another scenario is just Mike just losing, that would just seal it too for him being beer bitch. So it's pretty straightforward. I win, and I get out of that. I get out scot-free. It looks like Corey's got that 1 seed locked up. Nor is got that locked up just because of the fucking astronomical points. He's, I'm sorry, but he's been tapering off a little bit. Kareem Hunt coming back down to earth a little bit, so we'll have to see about that. And then it looks like Tony and Sam have their playoff wrapped sealed. And that's why I brought that up today. And it's funny because those two, they can't move up any more than they are, and they're locked in for the playoffs. So they're in the free-for-all no matter what. And of course, they play the two respective beer bitches that I'm competing against, and that's why I had to throw that out there. I think Tony wouldn't lay down. I mean, he wouldn't let down his sweet, sweet Bobo. So I got faith in him to go full throttle against Mike. So that's good. Sam, I worry about. He's always dicking around. I don't know what he's going to do. And there's very few people in this league that I would have to worry about. I'm not going to name names, but I think Kevin and Corey would definitely just have no integrity at all. And it's funny because let me go back and look at I had to look up the Constitution, and just on the very bottom in small print, and I will read it off verbatim. Under miscellaneous, the spirit of the league is to have fun and to remain competitive at all times. Any action taken that extends beyond the spirit will be eligible for a reversal by the league manager. Who's the league manager? With the owner's eligibility to remain in the leagues available to be voted on. So there it is. I knew it. Besides just being moral, it's in the Constitution. So no fucking around. It's going to be circumstantial to prove, if they're throwing it, but at least put the defense in, put the kicker in. I don't want to see any of that shit. If you're throwing off, that's not anyone to stand for. But I just wanted to put that out. It's in the Constitution, so I was glad to find that. But this is going to be an interesting race this last week, and we'll see what happens. And I may or may not be back next week, depending on if I'm bear bitch. I'll be gone.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
And I wanted to really quick. This kind of reminds me to make. And sorry, this is the last one of the week, and I'm sorry it's a little longer, but I wanted to bring up the fact that maybe a new rule proposal. And I think I've offered this before, and I just got immediately shut down by the usual suspects, but. I want to do beer bitch being the lowest points through 12 weeks. I think, looking at Mike, he's got the 4th most points scored. And he has 3 wins. And I look at someone's like Kevin's trash team where he has the 3rd least and he has 5 wins. So it's like one of those things where it's like right place, right time. I don't think that really truly reflects who is really the beer bitch. I think if you have the lowest points, you fucking suck. I mean, it's just like, I think it's just cut and dry. These losses, 113 to 110. I mean, shit. And you get a loss for that. I don't really think that truly reflects. I got to stick up for Mike here a little bit. So I don't know what you guys think about that. Maybe you guys can discuss that, but I know that it's been shot down before by me. So hopefully that'll turn. I think that's really kind of exemplifies a beer bitch being the least points. But yeah. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for listening through the regular season, and yeah, there's a lot to play for still. So we'll see you next week. All right, thanks. Bye.
All right, right, thanks for that spirited slander slate. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. All right, Nor, we're going to go to our weekly segment, what appears to be now. You know the deal. It's spare or fair. We had Kevin fill in for you last week, but I'm going to go through some scenarios from each matchup, and we're going to talk about whether they were a fair occurrence or maybe not. Maybe not.
Spares.
Okay. Let's start with matchup 1. Corey, the Mike Wallace Whisperer, starts Wallace again while he ties his season-high 11 fantasy points against the Packers, catching all 4 of his targets for 56 yards and a touchdown. Corey has started Wallace in 2 of the 3 games in which he has scored a touchdown this year. This start of Wallace, spare or fair?
I think of all the times I've had to come up with an answer for this for these segments, this was the easiest. This is 100% absolute spare. Of course it is.
Spare.
It's not only Corey doing something. The spare meter's 80% charged when Corey gets mentioned. But we're talking about Mike Wallace here. I mean, Mike Wallace, he might have been the catalyst for the term spare being a thing. I mean, think about all the times he's just had one catch for 60 yards and a touchdown or something like that. This wasn't exactly to that script, but the fact that Corey played him over Marvin Jones just for the sheer sake of trying to spite Kevin, with the fact that it's Mike Wallace adding to his score differential, is just the most spare thing you can think of.
All right, let's move on to matchup 2. The deciding factor in this matchup was clearly Baltimore's 31-point outing at Lambeau Field. Slater started Baltimore's defense. They've been up and down this season, but they have scored under 5 fantasy points 4 times, including a negative 6-point performance at Jacksonville. Was this domination of the Packers offense by the Baltimore defense spare or fair?
So at first I really wanted to call this one spare, especially with the mention of the negative 6-point outing that you alluded to. But I took a little deeper look into the trends here, and actually I'm going to go with this as being fair, and here's why. With all of the dud performances that you described that Baltimore has had here and there throughout the season, they've always followed it up with a positive, strong showing. Aside from the week 3 and 4 outings where they had the negative 6 you mentioned and I think 3 points. Aside from that, the Ravens have consistently followed up a dud with the following scores: 12, 34, 31. So, got to say that's fair. This one was due.
All right, let's move on to matchup 3. We've got Derek Carr. He threw 49 passes last Sunday against the Patriots, but it didn't translate into fantasy points as he scored a mere 13. Carr has only thrown more than 1 touchdown in just 3 games this season. Was this 13-point performance spare or fair?
I'd say this is unfortunately fair, only because the entire Raiders offense has been so hard to figure out this season. They've just been underperforming kind of every which way you can go about it. Carr in particular, aside from the 29-point outing against Kansas City, he's only had 17 or more points twice, and those 2 games happen to be weeks 1 and 2. So for the majority of the season, he's really just kind of riding on that 29-point outing. It's unfortunate that they can't seem to get their offense on track with the talent that they have, but given the fact that they just let go of their defense coordinator today, I think the offense coordinator is next on the chopping block. We'll see if they can get it together.
All right, matchup 4. Big Ben dominated the Tennessee Titans to the tune of 28 fantasy points. He threw 25% of his season's touchdowns in this game and had by far his greatest fantasy output of the season, conveniently in Cam Newton's bye week. Was this performance by Big Ben spare or fair?
So this is another one that I think I could easily go either way on, and honestly, I'm willing to hear arguments for and against, depending on who wants to lay those out. But for now, I'm going to call this fair, and there's really a couple reasons why. The Titans are by far the worst defense that the Steelers have played against this year. You look at the list of their teams, it's some middle of the road, some very good, some top-ish tier. But the Titans are not a good defense really at all yet. Also, it's a home game, which you know how Roethlisberger tends to play better at home. On a short week, you tend to favor the home teams. Just a lot of things kind of leaning the way of Roethlisberger. Also, over the last 3 years, he's been more and more prone to having these types of games every now and then. They kind of end up just buoying his numbers throughout the end of the year. Last year, I believe he had a 6-touchdown game and a 4-touchdown game at varying parts of the year. He might be due for another one of these types of explosions, but for now, a 4-touchdown outburst is kind of just, it's going to happen at some point for Ben.
All right, finally, our matchup. Matchup 5. Jake Elliott had been a solid kicking option for the Philadelphia Eagles this season and had scored double-digit fantasy points since week 3. But in week 11, he came out and kicked a dud to the tune of -1 fantasy points. This loss in week 11 all but assured Nor wouldn't secure the number 1 overall seed. Was this poor effort from Jake Elliott spare nor fair?
Of course this one comes up. What a surprise! Oh, I thought I was going to get through this whole segment without talking about Jake Elliott or Zach Ertz or times that I lied and got caught. I don't know what else you're going to bring up that would just make me feel worse right now. This is absolutely spare. I mean, other than Mike Wallace, this might be the most spare thing that's happened this season. Watching that Sunday night game had me pulling quotes from Major League as Bob Uecker. One goddamn kick. He missed one kick, -1 points, and you got knocked out of the game? Yeah, this is spare. This is as spare as it gets. And I think I am getting charged up for a Sandu slander, so you better calm me down.
All right, well, there you have it. We've got Nor's rulings on the spare or fair segment. And as always, Nor's rulings are always final.
I'll kill you!
All right, finally, we'll close out today's podcast with the review of the weekly power rankings. Number 10, Kevin Wallen, 5-6. Loser of 6 of his last 7 games. Fewer teams are colder than Kevin right now. He appears to never have recovered after losing Rodgers and David Johnson for the season. The 2-time champ will try to save face as he attempts to make a last-ditch effort to make the playoffs in Week 12. Number 9, Jason Bercese, 4-7. Jason may have put up a good fight in the battle of team names early on with Gomez last week, but his fantasy team failed to back up his words. Lack of overall talent appears evident from the QB position down. It appears he really needs week winning production from Melvin Gordon to stay competitive, and it hasn't happened in a few weeks. Number 8, Alex Slater, 4-7. An impressive showing in Week 11 stopped the skid for Slater. Alvin Kamara appears to be a bona fide stud, and Jay Ajayi appears to have found consistent production in the high-powered Philly offense. This team boasts a lot of firepower, and it is a shame it is too little too late for his playoff chances. Number 7, Mike Arriola, 3-8. Don't look now, but Arriola has won 2 straight in convincing fashion. Mark Ingram is scoring at a feverish pace, and the talented trio of wide receivers Evans, Hill, and Jones really have the ability to win a week single-handedly. Number 6, Mike Ferralis, 5-6. Still boasting a talented roster, a horrific week from Dak Prescott doesn't undo weeks of consistent performance. His talent base took a hit after dealing Le'Veon Bell last week, but he still could have enough difference makers to make a push for the playoffs. Number 5, Alex Gomez, 6-5. I would normally say it is difficult to predict scoring outputs from a defense like the Jags' 28-point performance in Week 11, but the Jags are consistent producers, week in and week out. On the back of the Jags D, Gomez boasts just enough supporting talent to make a playoff push here. Number 4, Tony Funston, 6-5. Losing in spectacular fashion in Week 11, it was nice to see a bounce-back week for Antonio Brown and LaShawn McCoy, but the lack of talent at the RB2 and flex positions are really holding this team back from its early season greatness. Number 3, Sam Nix, 6-5. Steadily climbing the ranks, Russell Wilson is carrying this team. The outlook only looks brighter for Danger Russ's upside as Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman have been lost for the season, putting the Sea Chickens in many favorable game scripts.
Oh, God.
You drink that milk, Russell. Number 2, North Sandu, 7-4, a loser in the battle of podcasters in Week 11. North still boasts a talented running back core, but the shine has definitely come off this group, as Fournette, Gurley, and Hunt don't seem to be the surefire 50-point contributors they were early in the season. And number 1 again, Corey Hart, 9-2, a run as improbable as it is impressive. Corey finds a way to win week in and week out. The addition of Le'Veon Bell really solidifies this running back core, and the sky is the limit for this team if he is firing on all cylinders. So, Nora, what do you think about this week's power rankings?
I got to agree with the placement of the teams you broke down. Really looking forward to seeing how things shake out this week. You got a log jam going on at 6-5, right under that at 5-6. There's a lot of movement that could happen, and as we know, the points are going to play a part as well. Looking forward to it.
All right, well, there you have it. Another episode of the Dual Threat Podcast in the books. We'll be back next week to preview the first round of the playoffs after the regular season finale of the Gridiron Gala. I've been your host, Sam, with my co-host, Nor.
Let's drink some more.
And my JB.
He's mine. I thought he was mine.
And JB behind the glass. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Turkey time. You know it's turkey time. Turkey time. Come on, it's turkey time. Turkey time. Everybody, turkey time. Turkey time.